I'm 25. I've abused drugs and become physically dependent as well as psychologically dependent on them. For example, methamphetamine use, a very long period of high use of methamphetamine for days at a time, but also overuse of psychedelics, benzodiazepines, and barbiturates. Drugs change a person no matter what. They can change a person for the worse, or they can change someone for the better. And in my experience, the majority of my experiences have been a change for the better when taking drugs. Specifically with hallucinogens, theogens and entheogens are the classes of drugs that I've had only ever amazing experiences on. They've always changed me for the better. Teaching me lessons and bringing things out that are within myself that I may not want to face. Psychologist is not going to help you do that, but take 50 tabs of acid and you'll do it.
Do you think there are certain beliefs and bias surrounding drugs and young people?
Yeah, there's this sort of opinion that all drug users are lower class, undesirable, but that's not actually the case. I work in a corporate environment. I know that there is massive use of especially amphetamines and cocaine in the corporate world. They're massive everywhere. The only reason that you see the lower class pointed out for these issues is because they're the ones that are negatively affected the most, as well as the over-exaggerated, potentially life-ruining situations that the mainstream media loves to push.
So what's your opinion of the youth drug culture, particularly in Canberra?
The youth drug culture is not very good. In Canberra, drugs are not being used for the right purposes. Mainly they're being used for a bit of fun on Friday or Saturday night, but they're much more important than that.
What are your experiences of this culture?
Outdoor music festival scene, nightclub scene, or previously the nightclub scene, as well as more at-home sort of house party drug using scene.
What impacts have you seen drugs make on young people?
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of negative and positive impacts. I've had a lot of friends become addicted to methamphetamine or opiates, but on the other hand, I've seen people completely change their lives, give up alcohol after drinking for all of their youth in the early 20s, taking a hit of DMT or a very large dose of LSD or psilocybin, and completely changing who they are, their entire character, for the better.
If drugs became legal, what impact do you think that would have on society?
There are three major impacts that would instantly be seen. The first one is organised crime would lose much of their funding. So things like child prostitution, slavery, people smuggling, things like that, they would all have significantly reduced funding. And those organisations that arrange those things would have significantly less funding, so we would see less organised crime. Additionally, the societal view of drug users would cease to be a criminal one and more of a public health issue. So addicts would get the treatment they need rather than being thrown in a cell. And finally, drug purity would alleviate a lot of the overdoses and things like that, because people would be getting a consistent level of quality from trusted manufacturers, that you wouldn't be concerned about purity levels of heroin and things like that, when heroin in Australia, for example, can be cut by up to 90%. So we would see higher quality drugs, which would lead to less deaths as well.
What would you say to parents concerned about their kids doing drugs?
I'd say to remember their youth and the fact that drug use has stayed relatively the same since the advent of the war on drugs.
What impact do you think psychedelics have on society?
For that, I'd like to say a quote by a famous psychedelic researcher called Ken Kesey, I think his name was, and he said, "I believe that with the advent of acid, we discovered new ways to think, and it has to do with piecing together new thoughts of mind. Why is it that people are so afraid of it? What is it about it that scares people so deeply? It is because that they are afraid that there is more to reality than that they have ever confronted, that there are doors that they are afraid to go in, and they don't want us to go in there either, because if we go in, then we might learn something that they don't know, and that makes us a little out of their control." Building on that, I think what he was trying to say there is that the effects of LSD on society, even when individuals are taking it and not large blocks of society, are so massive, because new ways of thinking and new patterns of thought and new philosophies have been created because of psychedelic use. So the effects of psychedelic use on society, even at the moment when use is actually quite minimal, has been tremendously positive. And I believe that if more people start taking psychedelics, we would have a societal and awakening on a level that this species have never encountered before.